All right. So what I'm doing right now, um, I've seen, um, so lately I've been seeing a lot of like community violence and like people trying to get like revenge, people just treating other people really bad and stuff. I've been seeing that a lot on the news. People are at each other's throats so often, and my theory was people with higher IQs, they don't engage in these same kind of sadistic acts as other people do. So, um, my idea was to look up people with high IQs. Um, I looked up people with the highest IQs, and I was trying to look into their biographies. And some of these people are still alive. Um, I think a lot of these people are still alive, actually. Um, my idea was to look into their biographies and see if there's any mention of any kind of acts of violence or anything that they were a part of. Um, Unfortunately, the biographies don't really go over that much detail about their lives. I don't know how pervasive that would be, or if they just happen to stay out of trouble, so it's not really mentioned. Um, Also, I think another thing that could prevent a biography that talks about anything negative, I'm just trying to find anything that talks about these high IQ people in a negative light that might show a different side of their humanity, that might relate it to the way that I see average people closer to average IQs acting on a day to day basis, on the terrible ways they treat each other. But none of these biographies really go into anything. Unfortunately, most of the biographies I find are just Wikipedia. It doesn't seem like there's like biographies that really talk about anything. Um, like I saw this biography, it really just is like three paragraphs on her accomplishments. Um, but I think another problem is if they're still alive, um, it's probably not going to display them in too much of a negative light if they're still alive. If there's any recorded history of them doing something negative, that probably won't come out until after they go down, until they leave their their existence. But I have a feeling there's really not that much of a negative light to put them in. Nobody's perfect. Even people with high IQs are still human. Um, so you know, undoubtedly they've done something in their lives. But that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is something to relate them to the kind of sadistic way that normal people seem to treat each other on a day to day basis. How people are always at each other's throats and always coming up with excuses to hurt each other, and nobody's ever coming up with excuses to forgive each other and move on and do something nice. Um, so this is the closest thing I found to anybody. Out of what I've searched so far, this guy William James Sidis. I believe there's a movie about him. It might be mentioned here, like Good Will Hunting or something like that. I've never seen it. Um, I don't know. Uh, but this is the closest thing I got. Was he got arrested because he was involved in politics? He said he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Um, and this guy has. If we go look at the IQs over here, William James Sidis. He's like the second smartest person ever recorded in the world. Um, it gives it a range of his IQ. It says 250 to 300. So he could be the smartest, or he could be the second smartest. Uh, Second naturally smartest. Um, but however, this is the closest thing I could get to finding what I was talking about was politics. He was arrested for participating in a socialist May Day parade in Boston. that turn violent. Now that isn't very specific. It doesn't really tell us anything. It says it turned violent. I'm not sure exactly what that means by it turned violent. Um, what kind of violence, who was perpetrating the violence, who initiated, exactly how bad it got, who did what. Was it like rioting? Was it like Molotovs? Was it like cops just engaging and people just like hitting each other? What kind of violence? Because sometimes when media says violence, it's not actually violence, and sometimes when they say violence, it's like really bad. So I'm not sure, but this is the closest thing I could find to that. Um, Basically, what I wanted to try to say here, the statement I wanted to try to make with this was that I wanted, or a statement. I'm not saying this correctly, but basically, I wanted to show people that um, the people that we should be looking up to, um, obviously we can't be as smart as them. We don't have naturally superhuman level IQs, basically. None of us are learning entire languages at 1 years old or anything. But we should still be trying to adapt some of their ways of life, or some of their, not ways of life, some of their philosophies into our lives, right? Because they just have a better understanding. Like if you think of a Rubik's cube, like they just see how the Rubik's cube works better than we do, right? Uh, like they can just hold it in their mind better. They can just make everything work better. Another interesting thing would be to see what kind of difficulties they faced socially, like what kind of danger they went through, if they were attacked by anybody, or what kind of things they went through, how they dealt with that. I think those would be very important examples if things like that came out from geniuses, from high IQ people, to see how they handle being attacked and treated unfairly, and how they handle dealing with like narcissists and sociopaths, and even psychopaths. Uh, though I'm kind of wary to say psychopaths because honestly, um, after I'd done a bunch of research on psychopaths, my own independent research, I came to the conclusion that um, psychopathy is not always really bad. In most cases, actually, the majority of psychopaths really aren't that bad of people, and they understand there's a difference between them and the rest of the other like people who don't have what, or at least people who have what they don't emotionally. So I'm kind of hesitant to say like how they deal with psychopaths, um, because I mean there are a few psychopaths that do terrible things, and they don't, they're not going to feel bad about it. They're just not going to care, because to a psychopath everything is just like matter. There's no like emotional or spiritual layer behind anything, or something like that. I don't know. That's what I've come to understand. Um, but it would be really nice to see how these high IQ geniuses deal with like sadistic people who just don't care about anybody but themselves. Um, how they deal with those kind of problems, and that's what I was kind of hoping to see, because I wanted to show people again. I wanted to show people that um, higher intelligence has different ways of dealing with things, and that we should look up to that, and we should try to be um, more advanced like that. More, I mean, I don't know how many different ways you can say it, but I wanted to show people that there are better ways of dealing with our emotions. Um, there are some interesting things I've seen pointed out by other people on YouTube and stuff. Uh, Geniuses all seem to kind of high IQ people all seem to congregate towards the same sorts of